Good morning. We're going to try and do the impossible today, which is cover about, 300 rods in 10 minutes. We've had some requests to do just a little background on Seeker and Cal-Star rods. Cal-Star we did yesterday, so today it's Seeker's time. Seeker is another one of the California rod building companies. Its background, like Cal-Star, comes by way of the old Saber Seeker rod. Has a number of different series of rods. And I'll give you a little bit of background as far as philosophies here. Rods historically have had a line test rating, and that is kind of misleading. Some rods might be listed from 15 to 40 pounds, for instance. Well, when you think about it, that's unreasonable. There's a certain point where that rod bends appropriately for a certain line test's drag setting. It would be better if rods were based on, rod ratings were based on the drag setting, because that tells you how hard of a pull, what they're going to wind up doing in the real world. So it may be best to go ahead and communicate with us and the staff here as far as what you're doing. I get a lot of emails, I'm going to be fishing, this reel, what rod should I pick? Well, it doesn't matter what reel. What matters is the line test, because with that line test set at 25 to 30% or 33% of the drag, now we know what sort of drag load you have and what rod is appropriate for that. Seeker has, my gosh, probably 6-7 different series of rods. On the fresh or inshore part of the line, there are two products to look at. One is the inshore series, and in the past the inshores have been the Blue Lightnings. Blue Lightning because the wrap is blue. If we get up there, maybe you can see that a little bit with blue and gold. And then the handles were blue. Over time, the handle material is going to be shifted over to a black foam, EVA foam, and that, I think will probably match up with more reels, but both are very good. I've owned several inshore rods for a long time. The guide sets that are used, you can see here on the inserts, they're fine for use with Spectra lines. Wonderful little rods, very, very light. Lots of them feature a trigger grip on the 7-footers and the conventional, and they do real well from a private boat standpoint, even shore use. They can go up to 8 feet in length. They have some with light rollers, and typically guys use these from maybe 10 pound, 12 pound on up to 20 pound, although there are a couple models that will work close to 30. Just depends on how you pull them. But the benefit on those rods is that they're very, very light. The pricing is not terrible, and they're a lot of fun to fish. Great for fishing the bass on the inshore series. To go along on that, and a little bit lighter series of rods that really came into our stock from the back door from some of the kayak guys were the React series. And the Reacts are very, very light, use a cork grip, very sensitive. Again, they're a glass rod, fiberglass, like the inshores and like the Classic series and the East Coast series. Again, the guys utilize an insert. They're Spectra safe, and they're reasonably priced. So the step up within that React series would be the React Pros, and this would be one. The blanks are kind of a unique green color with a gold and green, metallic green wrap. They utilize a split grip, and again a trigger. Again, blank through construction all the way through, one piece, like all the rods in those two series. Real sensitive, powerful. They utilize the little micro guides, very, very tiny, kind of hard to see probably, but trust me, they're there. Down to the tip top, really, really tiny little guys. Very sensitive. Again, a wonderful rod for fishing calicos. The React Pros are just that. They're great casting pieces. They're made for guys, again, fishing the bass typically. Wonderful calico rods. They're not inexpensive. I'm going to say over $2 for these guys, but they're worth every penny of it. One point I should mention with Seeker rods, they're all built here in California. They're USA made. A USA made rod is a good thing. Typically, the offshore stuff is built to a price point. There are some specific differences in that respect, and there's a range in the offshore stuff, offshore production stuff. But the Seekers and Cal-Stars, they're the standards by which all other rods are measured. In my opinion, they're the two best companies going in terms of rod development, and we're fortunate that both are based here in California. They all feature a limited lifetime warranty on the blank, and frankly, in many, many years, I have yet to see a failure that was blank related. Although Both Seeker and CalStar do honor their warranty. They have a minimal charge for replacement of a rod, but the vast majority of rods I've seen broken have been from user error or vicious car doors. As far as user error, a lot of rods are broken simply by guys setting their drags. Rods are made to have a bend, that's more horizontally based, not vertical load going straight down. And I've seen some heavy rods that have been broken by guys setting their drags where they've had the rod in a rod holder and just gone straight down. That's not how they're made. That would be abuse if you break a rod in that sense. And if I was Seeker or CalStar, I'd probably say, forget you guys. I'm not going to replace your rod. You broke it. That's user error. You can't make something idiot proof to a car door or somebody who's doing things inappropriately. They're not made for high sticking, which would be, again, a vertical load. Vertical loads break rods, but used appropriately, which is a horizontal load, as you would be fishing with the rod out in front of you, even going up vertical, it's still getting an arc on it. That is appropriate, and that's not where failure is seen on these things. Where failure occurs typically is where a guy blows it. I've broken one rod in my career, and I was man enough to say it was my fault. Caught a stupid mackerel, had the kids on the boat, and sure, I put it in the rod holder so I can get a kid off on another rod, or that had another, I think it was a little bonita on it, and sure enough, I let the thing go vertical, and I snapped the tip. My fault. It was not anybody else's. That was mine. I owned it, but Seeker covered it on warranty. Okay, next up from those inshores would be the Stealth, and the Stealth is a new one. The Stealth utilizes more modern blank material, making use of graphite as well as glass. Real light rods. They are popularly priced, and I think part of the point of these rods is just to go ahead and do a shot over the bow for some of the, let's see, I can think of one bicycle maker in particular who brings in a number of rods from China and sells them at a high price. Well, I'm sorry, those are low-end rods when push comes to shove. And they can try and mimic the action of a Seeker or a CalStar, but they ain't the real deal. Seeker, they do produce everything here. We do have higher costs here, but they went ahead and said, to heck with it. Well, we'll take that margin on the chin and we will go ahead and cut these guys off at the pass. And that's, in my estimation, anyway, what the Stealth series of rods does. Great rods made for fish and spectra, popularly priced under $2 and they have a wonderful bend to them. They fish very well. And the type of money you invest in something like this is minimal, but at least it puts a Seeker in your hands. And I think their philosophy, much like Avid with their little SXs and that sort of thing, if you can get guys fishing the better quality stuff, as they move up, they'll move up through that same line. So I think it was a good gamble on their part. But boy, it's some nice stuff on the Stealth series. They're kind of a Gunsmoke or a gray blank material along with black on the wraps. Real subtle, stealthy. Like a one of those black jets, flying around, or a black helicopter. The idea is to be kind of stealthy, and they are, and they're light and very sensitive. So the Stealth series of rods around the $2 range and down. They go from line tests of about 15 pound on up to 30 or so, maybe even 40. And then that's it for that series of rods. You go into something else. So again, making use of graphite. Now back to the Classic series. The Classics are based on the old Sabre mandrels, and the Classics are classic production pieces. They make use of fiberglass or e-glass on the blanks. They make them in roller configurations. They make them in ring guides. They do both types. They also do some deckhand series rods, and we'll talk about deckhands here in a minute. These guys are popularly priced. They're not terribly expensive. They have the benefit of that durability that fiberglass gives us in a rod, but they'll be a little heavier, okay, than say a Stealth series or a Black Steel, which makes use of graphite, and we'll talk about in a moment. Good bread and butter rods, and in each series here you probably have 30 different models for different applications, and that's where talking to us makes a lot of sense. But we go glass on these guys. When we move from the Classic series, we get into the Black Steels. The Black Steels would be the next step up, and those make use of graphite. And on the Black Steels, there'll be graphite through the butt section up, and then they'll transition to fiberglass at the tip. That's a design philosophy that's also shared by CalStar. Because graphite tends to be kind of brittle. There's only one company I know of that can make an all graphite saltwater rod and have it work well, which would be Graphite USA, or the old Graphite USA, which is now United Composites USA, and they too are produced here in California. But these guys within the black steels were the best that Seeker built until they came out with two other series of rods, which we'll get into. They utilize titanium guides versus the steel guides that are used in the other series we've talked about. And the titanium guides, the benefit of the titanium is that the stuff doesn't rust. It's just real strong. They have an insert, so they're Spectra safe. The weight decreases somewhat. They've got all the bases covered, even into some of the real heavy stuff, and some of the rail rods they introduced in the Black Steel series, oh boy, 2004, maybe 2005, for the guys going cow fishing on the long range boats. They've caught an awful lot of fish, and there's some models within that series that are just particularly on the money. The 870 in the Black Steel series for Fishing 20 is wonderful, just light. They did a redesign of the 870s and the 670s a few years back, and those rods are superb. So the 870 for 20, a 670 for 30 is just super. And they have some specialty pieces like a 6470, which is a Wahoo piece for 40 pound, maybe up to 50, and a 6470H. But a lot of different models again within that series of rods on the Black Steel. And then from the Black Steel series, the Seeker introduced, a few years ago, the Super Seeker series. Now here we have heavier guides. These make use of carbon fiber, and then they will transition and use S-glass. S-glass is about 30% stronger than E-glass is. And they don't back off on that, on the thickness of the mat in doing that so they can make a lighter rod. They'll make use of the strength. So the Super Seekers are just that. They pull. They will fish their line test rating on the upper end, and they'll fish it well. You can really pull super hard on these things. They're very durable rods and beautiful pieces with that kind of a chocolate brown blank, and then they transition it with the wraps into a gold and blue trim. Real nice rods. Heavy pieces relatively to the line test they fish, but that's where that strength comes in with the S-glass. If you're going after bigger fish, a Super Seeker is a great place to be. And they run the whole gamut again. They'll go down to 196s, 270s, rods that are 12 pound, 15 pound, but they go way up also. And they have trolling pieces, they have rail pieces, they have specialty pieces like the 6470 for Wahoo, that sort of thing. But that's the high end of Seeker in the more traditional West Coast style of rods. Now, beyond that, where Seeker developed over the last 2-3 years were the Hercules series rods. Now, the Hercules series rods addressed what was coming over from Asia on the jigging side, where we want to have a bend that's a little bit more parabolic. By that, instead of being fast taper where you bend at the tip and then you shut off, these guys bend throughout the blank more. And that works wonderfully well when we're fishing primarily Spectra with a short leader, or for bottom fishing where we're trying to fling a jig and get good action vertically. If we're going straight Spectra, you've got no stretch. So a rod that's a bit more forgiving is a great way to go. It has much more of an application than simply as a vertical jig fishing piece. I've seen some guys use these blanks, and they are a little thinner in terms of their diameter. I've seen some guys using these like on SX Raptor and using them wonderfully. Let me go ahead and knock off this telephone call that's coming in, and I'll be right back here with you. Well, a little bit of spam there on the telephone. The Hercules series are made from, they use the S-glass again, like the Super Seekers, and they use carbon fiber, and they use the titanium guides. So it's the top quality as far as the componentry. They're lighter than would be a black steel, thinner in terms of diameter for the blank. So if you're fishing like a little SX Raptor, and I saw on a 6-day charter we did a couple years ago, a couple of guys that were doing that with SX Raptor and these little Hercules rods, and my God, those suckers were on fish the whole time we're on that boat. They just work out great that way because they'll help cushion the strike a little bit. They have more forgiveness, so you're not getting beaten up as much as you would on a fast taper rod. That's really more designed for mono, in my estimation anyway. And because of the way the thing bends on a big fish, a parabolic rod has some distinct benefits because we're always keeping pressure on the fish. You always have a little bit of a spring going on there, and that helps poop the fish out and keep the pressure on them instead of on your shoulders. So the Hercules really have a wide range of application, and they do these in the spinning guide mode as well as conventional guides. So for the guys fishing spinners and some of the better quality spinners, these are a wonderful option. And some of the guys on the vertical jig side certainly like using spinning reels. Okay, now a couple of series of rods that just came into play this past year were the Rail Boss and also the Pinheads. The Rail Boss rods are made for guys fishing heavier lines, basically let's say 60 to 130 class for big fish, typically on a bigger boat, where guys are putting the rod underneath the armpit, okay, and then winding, and they're putting the rod itself on the rail of the boat. So they may be on their knees, praying at the rail as a tuna is vertical, okay, doing it spiral as they're trying to bring the thing up, utilizing the motion of the boat. So you've got a fulcrum point on that boat's rail, and they're made to keep, again, that pressure on the fish to help get some lift there, making use of the boat as part of that fishing equation. Heavy braced guides are relatively parabolic bend to the rods. Again, they're part of that system to help bring up and lift up a big fish and to keep the pressure on, and that's where the lactic acid gets built up. They are a heavy rod. These are made of glass. They're not made of graphite and glass, but they hit a more popular price point for a fella. So I'm going to say approximately that $3 range, $3.50, something like that, instead of well over $5 when you get into a piece that's a dedicated rail piece within the Super Seeker series or even the Black Steel series of rod. The other series of rods that Seeker came out with this past year were the Pinheads. Now, a pinhead is not describing the relative intelligence of the fisherman using that. A pinhead out here is a newbie on a boat. In other words, a new deckhand. And kid comes to work, he's a pinhead. He's doing all the basic type of stuff. He wants to be a deckhand when he grows up. And so that's the Pinhead series. They are old school. They're glass blanks, steel guides, and the vast majority of them would be using your basic deckhand style cork tape rod. The benefit with a cork tape rod is that you're going to set that reel up roughly an arm's distance or 4 arms distance from the butt of the rod. Put your elbow at the butt, and then where your wrist goes is typically where a guy will mount the reel with a reel clamp. Great rods for casting. These guys are kind of old school. They use some of the old Truline actions, some of the old Saber actions in that respect. Fairly parabolic in terms of the way they bend. Great jig sticks, great for tossing out a bait. Just super, super rods. And again, tremendous value. These guys are under $2. They do, all of them are deckhand style. All of them are cork tape. All of them are in that 8-foot, even to 9-foot length. Don't ask about shipping 9-foot rods because, my God, it's expensive. But the 8-footers we can certainly handle at a reasonable charge. So that's a capsule on Seeker rods. I know it's a lot of different product in a short period of time, and we've left out a lot of stuff, but those are the basic series of rods, and we can talk to you over the phone or at either of our shops as far as what model makes the most sense for you. But that's about it for Seeker. Again, California made, USA made quality, wonderful warranty behind the pieces, an exceptional history of rods. It's just doggone it, just good stuff. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.